Who's the dumbest person you've ever met, and what story perfectly sums up their stupidity? Story 1. One night during high school, my friend and I got invited to a party. I didn't drive back then, so my friend picked me up. All went well on our way to the party. On the way back, however, he got pulled over. As we were pulling to the side of the road, I told him that I was going to pretend to be sleeping, since I was a passenger. Anyway, I hear the cop get out of his cop car, walk towards our car, and stop at the window, but doesn't say anything. I can feel the brightness of his flashlight, but I don't hear him or my friend say anything. After about what seemed like an eternity, I decided to open my eyes to see what was going on. That's when I see my friend, the guy who's driving, pretending like he's sleeping too. Story 2. I was lifeguarding at a frat party. My lifeguard friends all told me not to lifeguard for this frat, but I had my certifications freshly renewed, and they were paying really well, so I took on the challenge. I would not recommend it. There was a very drunk guy who offered me a drink when I was standing. I said no, I was guarding the water. Afterward, this same guy gets a full beer, not even open, bashes it against his head and screams, "Woo!" He's bleeding from his head now and recognizes it, is shocked for a second, and then it hypes him up even more. He then dives headfirst into the dirty 6-foot pool filled with people. Now this water was shallow. He literally could have paralyzed himself. I blow a whistle just as everything is doing, and when he gets out, he can't understand why I'm frustrated and tries to flirt with me. Mid-sentence, he recognizes he lost his Ray-Bans, stupid expensive shades, in the murky water and asks me to drain the pool. This dude was such an idiot and acted stupidly the entire 3 hours while his even more stupid friends hyped him up. Story 3. I worked once with a man named Roy. Roy had theories about how to live life, Royconomics. One day, he turned to me and the other member of the crew. "You boys want to know how you get nice things?" he asked. "You go to the store and you finance everything, new furniture, new appliances, television, stereos, everything. Then you don't make any payments and you don't show up for your court date. They'll end up garnishing your wages, but they take way less than the payments would have been. And then about a week later, you boys want to know how you buy a house? You apply for every credit card you can possibly get. You take out your entire balance in cash from all of them, and then you use that for your down payment. Then you don't make any payments and you don't show up for your court date." For people thinking that they may know this specific Roy, I last saw him 10 years ago, and at that time he was in his early 50s, was rocking a gray, blonde skullet, and lived in a hamlet in the province of Saskatchewan. Story 4. My friend's sister was 20 and pregnant, and she said something about how upset she was that her lady parts would be ruined. I jokingly said, "Maybe you'll come out your butt instead." She said, "What do you mean? Can they come out there too?" I thought she was joking, so I just said, "Duh, it's a 50-50 shot." She thought I was serious and asked her doctor if he could tell if the baby was going to come out of her lady parts or bum. I know technically you can tear from your lady parts to your bum in labor, meaning since it kind of becomes one hole, the baby would come out of the vagina ass, but she didn't think this. She thought she would the baby out. Should also mention there's a 30% chance it may be her first cousin's baby. She told me they only made out, but her friend let it slip that they'd been banging. Story 5. The first time I met Ben was in Improv 101. I was only taking the class for fun, but about half the people there were aspiring actors, including Ben. On the first day, the teacher had us all play this silly game to break the ice so we'd all remember each other's names. The rules were pretty simple. Number 1, pick an adjective that starts with the same letter as your first name. 2, introduce yourself using adjective plus first name. And 3, do a simple gesture that goes with it. So everyone is going around the circle introducing themselves as Daring Daniel and Lonely Lauren and Awesome Alex until we get to Ben. Ben introduces himself as Surfer Ben. He proceeded to misunderstand at least one key element of every game or exercise for the rest of the class. I have no clue how this man functions in daily life. He has since managed to get a few featured extra roles on TV, though. Story 6. Back in my younger and crankier days, I worked with a young woman who was hands down the dumbest person I've ever met. Her highlights include winning a basket auction that included a copy of the Beach Boys album Pet Sounds and complaining because she didn't want to hear a lot of mooing. And then one day, she was driving me up a wall. I convinced her to wait to open her bottle of Coke because the bottle said there was a winner every 5 minutes. She was disappointed she didn't win after waiting exactly 5 minutes. I, however, enjoyed her sulky silence for the rest of the day. Now, the best, worst one involved her chatting with a manager who was African American. She's white. They were discussing their shared, slightly uncommon name and then realized their families both came from South Carolina. She thought for a few minutes and then excitedly exclaimed, "I bet my family owned yours." She was so proud of herself for figuring out that historic connection. The manager didn't say a word and just walked away. Story 7. My brother. He's genuinely the stupidest person I know. He has broken his arms 5 times, 3 for the right arm and 2 for the left, and this is how he did it. At first, at the age of 7, dancing on a table, fell off. Also, at the age of 15, smoking pot with a friend, a cop shows up and he runs, jumps a fence, shorts get caught, and he falls out of them onto his arm. At the age of 17, runs in front of his friend's truck as it went down the road at around 30 miles per hour. Then, while at the age of 19, was trying to hide from someone and jumped over a couch and somehow broke his arm. I don't remember how he broke it the other time, I just know it's been 5 times. And then he was also arrested for possession of a firearm when he is not legally allowed to own one. It was his friend's firearm, and he pointed it at a cop. He got expelled from my high school twice. He had 2 lines in a mandatory play. He still messed it up. And then while in prison, he got a marijuana leaf tattooed on his face. Upon seeing him for the first time after prison, he said, "Mom thinks I'm getting it removed, but I'm only going to make it better. I'm also going to get Chinese lettering down my face. We are painfully white." He dropped out of high school before finishing the 10th grade, not because he had to, but just because he didn't like school and wanted to do drugs instead. He ended with a 3 in history and a 6 in math. I don't know what his other grades were. When he was 15, my uncle was 30. It took half an hour to explain to him why he would not always be half of my uncle's age. He genuinely believed that the Ebola scare a couple of years ago was the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. Story 8. I'm sure if I thought really hard, I could come up with someone more stupid, but this story is pretty good. There was this one receptionist at the vet's office we have taken our dogs to over the years who argued with my dad about how to pronounce his own name. He went in to pick up some prescriptions for our dog Daisy, and this girl asked the typical name of the dog, name of the owner type questions. "We have it listed as Michelle, and you don't look like a Michelle," she says. Dad asked how it was spelled on the monitor, and sure enough, it was still spelled Michael, Dad's name. He said, "That says Michael, that's my name." And she argued with him about it. He had to get his driver's license out to show her, and even though she finally relented to let him pick up whatever it was he was down there to pick up, she was adamant my dad had been mispronouncing his own name for 50 plus years. The best part is Dad tells us this whole story and we think nothing of it till like 3 months later when Mom took the dog in for a checkup. The girl still thought the owner of the dog was Michelle and that my mom must be in a lesbian relationship. Mom gently corrected the lady that it was Michael, and again this girl was adamant it was pronounced Michelle. Mom, bemused, said something along the lines of, "It's literally a name from the Bible. It's pronounced Michael and has been for thousands of years." The receptionist sat in silence outside of the minimal amount of talking needed for the rest of that visit. Story 9. My ex-husband. We were playing rock, paper, scissors to decide who had to go change the baby. Best 2 of 3. In round 1, I throw scissors and he throws a rock. "I win," he proclaimed. In round 2, I throw paper and he throws a rock. "I win," he says again. Paper beats rock," I tell him. His response? "No, rock beats everything." I spent like 5 minutes trying to wrap my mind around this. Finally, I ask him, "Then what's the point of even playing?" In total sincerity, he says, "To have fun." Sadly, he was not trolling me. He was completely serious. I know, it's hard to believe, but in all fairness, he was born and raised in Florida, so I changed the baby. I did pretty much everything involving the baby after that. As for my level of intelligence and that of my son, I think he said it best himself when, at 4 years old, he said to me, "Daddy can't help it. What's your excuse?" Story 10. I once called an Uber driver. When he arrived, he immediately asked me, "Are you going to Central Park?" I said, "No." He responded, "Great, because I'm not going to take you to Central Park." "Fine," I said. And then the journey gets underway, and I'm curious as to what he would have done if I said that, yes, I wanted to go to Central Park. So I asked him, "Hey, what would you have done if I said that I did want to go to Central Park?" He responded, "Look, man, I'm not going to take you to Central Park, okay? I told you already." I was a bit befuddled, but I tried again. No, I don't want to go there. In fact, you already know where I want to go. It's on your destination map. I'm just curious." What if I did want to go to Central Park? Would you have refused me the trip? Would you have driven off? He said, Look, man, I can't change the trip now. And anyway, I told you I refused to go to Central Park. You gotta understand, I'm busy. We spent nearly 15 minutes with variations of this back and forth. He was a fluent English speaker, by the way, but by the end of it, I was 100% convinced that he couldn't understand the syntax of a hypothetical. He literally couldn't understand the question, if X situation, which is not the case, then what action would you take? I wasn't even mad, just astonished. How had he managed to navigate through life thus far? What were his financial decisions like? I really wanted to follow him home and make a reality TV show about him or something. Story 11. There was this guy at my high school that wasn't too bright and was mostly harmless, but about halfway through decided he was going to be a thug. One day, he goes into a class of first years when their teacher wasn't there and robs all their electronics, cash, and valuables at knife point. Without covering his face before he left, gave them his real name, saying, And you better not tell them it was me, Jim Conrad, that stole all your stuff. He then proceeded to leave the school grounds with all the stolen stuff, but decides against stashing it off campus, and so came back with all the stolen stuff in his backpack and went to spy on the class with his backpack full of loot, while police officers were there taking statements to make sure they weren't ratting him out. Now, for those of us that want the end of the story, but it's too buried to find, the kids all rat him out, and when he hears his name, he steps into the class proclaiming he'd gut them if they didn't take back saying he did it, with the officers still in the class and all his loot on his back. He was expelled and arrested, and when word got out to our year group, everyone just face-palmed. I don't know why he's so stupid, but it wasn't an isolated act of idiocy. It was quite well known by everyone in my year group how dumb he was. He didn't even qualify for admission, but his family called in a ton of favors to get him in on recommendation. Story 12. I helped a client out to his car with some merchandise. He struggled for a bit to get into the vehicle. I jokingly asked if it was his car. He backed up, looked at it, and said, Nope, this is not my car, and went to a different color and make of car in the lot. There were only 3 cars in the whole lot. He was not elderly or had any obvious deficiencies. Not to say he didn't, but we had a lot of interaction with him and he seemed mostly to just not listen or pay attention. I work in a vet clinic, so he was a client, not a customer. I was helping him out to his car with some dog food. He does have 2 vehicles, but one is a big pickup and the other is a small car. 2 of the vehicles were cars and one was an SUV. I remember this because it was such a bizarre exchange. And the cars were nothing alike. I don't remember the exact models, but one was maroon and one was silver. He was notorious for being numb. No matter what we did or instituted after an appointment he had with us, he would always forget everything we had said and lose the paperwork we sent with him between our office and his house. His girlfriend would always call in a tizzy that we told him nothing of what was going on with the dogs or how to use the medications or whatever, and he liked to argue with the vets that whatever they diagnosed was wrong. They currently go to another local clinic after fighting with one of our vets, but will be back after fighting with the other one. They've been back and forth a few times. Oh, he also bought a puppy and wanted his ears cut. Now, we don't do that, so he went a couple of states away to have them done, but then didn't tape them up properly and now they're cut and floppy. The poor dog is sweet, but dumb, untrained, and looks stupid because of this stupid guy. Story 13. I knew this guy in high school who really thought his practical jokes were hilarious. He would just do stuff designed to piss you off, thinking your salty reaction would make it funny. Now, you may be thinking this guy's a dick, and you'd be right. But he's also incredibly stupid because every time someone said, dude, chill out with your bullshit, he just blew it off. Social stupidity, I guess. Well, one day he knocked this kid's hat off his head. These guys were friends, but clearly there was some hostility. Another kid picks up his hat and tells Pranker to f off. Pranker smacks his hat again. Another kid tells him if Pranker knocks his hat off a 3rd time, he'd knock Pranker's head off. Pranker has a eating grin, is completely oblivious to how dead-ass serious this guy was, and got absolutely clocked in the face when he f***ed with this guy's hat a 3rd time. All he could say was, "What the f***, man, chill out," but no one was willing to hear him out. Story 14. The guy I worked with named Buddy bought a huge Snap-on roll-away toolbox for over $3,000 on credit. 2 days later, he sold it to a coworker for $1,500 because he had some overdue bills and had to pay them. Needless to say, he never paid Snap-on for the toolbox. He was off into the winds after he was fired for starting his 4th fist fight at work. One of the other guys I worked with told the Snap on salesman where Buddy's new job was, and last we heard they are now garnishing his wages. Guy was a nutcase, though. He had very thin skin, and the slightest thing would set him off. He went absolutely nuts when he was set off, though. He yelled at the security guard and threatened to have him fired because he didn't like his tone. He almost got fired 3 times for fighting, but he was able to win the department manager over until the 4th time. Oh, and one time he was told to put caution tape across a malfunctioning gate, and he said, "I don't know how." Story 15. I work for a small retailer, and we had that guy for a while. He would call every day and ask the same questions, and no, not in different ways or something that can be construed as clever. This same person also couldn't figure out the key fob for his own car and had to have his 5-year-old daughter let him into his own car. He has kids, let that sink in for a second. He's incapable of basic math besides addition and subtraction. We buy stuff, and when we tell him he gets 30%, he doesn't understand what that means. He also asks every time how much he's getting, despite not understanding the answer. Also, I'm not sure he actually knows how to drive. We have a dumpster in our parking lot, and he manages to bump it every time with his car. Every time he leaves, we have to go move it because he hits it on the way in and out. Back to the fact that he's a father somehow, he's also an awful parent. We have witnessed him telling his kids they are worthless and terrible, stupid, dumb, and any number of insults that are more applicable to himself. Unfortunately, that's not something we can report to CPS. I have watched him, on more than one occasion, fail to open the door to the bathroom and simply walk into it face first. He once came in with a hamburger of some kind and while eating it, pulled a packet of mustard out of his pocket. He did not put this mustard on his hamburger. He instead bit into the packet and sucked the mustard out. I could keep going. One time, he left his daughter in the car and she locked herself out with the key inside. Instead of walking 2 buildings down to the car repair place, he took a rock and broke the driver's side window. Our store has both a publicly accessible webpage for making orders from home as well as in-store kiosks. Despite him owning a modern Android smartphone, one using it up to look food, he claims he doesn't have the internet to use our website from home. His wife, or girlfriend, I don't actually know, calls him just about every time he's in, and he lies to her every time saying he's on the way home and that he's stuck in traffic. As many of you might have guessed, he's not particularly well groomed, although he usually has something in his hair. What that something is, I'm not sure. That's all I've got. He recently moved further away, so we don't see him very often anymore. Story 16. This girl I went to school with thought Earth had 2 moons and adamantly argued with me and a teacher. The girl thought that there were 2 moons of the same size, one on each half of the Earth. She thought that the Earth didn't rotate while in orbit. She also thought that since the sun was so big and bright that it blocked the moon during the day. None of anything she said ever made sense, and she would not answer any further questions or follow up with any rebuttals. I didn't try to make her feel stupid. I don't like doing that to anyone for any reason, and once I saw how set she was on what she believed, I backed off, because I'm not one to force any views, beliefs, facts, or opinions on anyone else. And I never said that I don't give my opinion or view or that I don't present facts. I do. I will always say what I have to say, but after a certain period of time, when a conversation comes to a complete standstill and nothing is getting through to a person, I do choose to walk away, and I do so knowing that I tried my best and nothing I can do will be effective. Story 17. I had a guy in a 3rd-year undergrad developmental psych course raise his hand in a full lecture hall and ask the professor, "Prof, do infants diagnosed with SIDS get asthma later in life? Like, are they more likely to get asthma?" SIDS stands for Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. He just kept pursuing the question. The prof didn't understand how she could answer it. She just thought there was some kind of logic in it that she wasn't seeing. Finally, some girl took the initiative to shout across the room, "No, they're not more likely to get asthma. They're dead. They have died suddenly and thus will not be at risk of developing asthma." Great day. He always sat in front of me and I would see him writing just absolutely horrible poetry and song lyrics. Story 18. My cousin. All through public high school, she was a snob who looked down on everyone. She was super stylish and struggled academically. We graduated in 2014. We both went to colleges, not the same one. She got a job at a bar and stayed out late drinking. Her boyfriend told her she didn't need to complete college, so she just stopped showing up. Didn't drop, just stopped showing up, completely flunked out. Now here comes the mega stupid part. Our families live hours away from her college at the time. Her family went to move her back home. My cousin's mom noticed a pile of clothes in the corner. The mom said, "What's that? Your laundry? Pack it and we'll wash it when we get home later." My cousin, and I kid you not, "You can wash those?" Turns out she'd been throwing away clothes instead of washing them. She claimed she didn't know she could, yet she washed her undergarments and bras without a hitch. She's now at home with her family and has started doing more chores to show an increase in responsibility. She still tries to throw clothes away, citing that she didn't know that they could be washed or reused. Makes me wonder what she thought all those years before college before she left home. She wore some of the same outfits repeatedly. She had to have known they could be washed. Story 19. A friend in college. She had lots of stupid moments, but the best story is probably the night she went home with a guy and was freaking out the next day that she might be pregnant. They had not had intercourse, he just fingered her, but for some reason she thought maybe he had sperm on his hands and therefore could have got some inside her. I never fully understood why she thought this. I vaguely remember her saying something about how he might have been jacking off before he touched her, but she didn't see. I don't know. So anyway, she is so anxious about this that she decides she needs the morning after pill and gets it. Then, because of the warnings about how ill it can make you, she concluded that she needed to tell her parents the whole tale. Honestly, can't remember her logic here. Why didn't she just wait to see if it even made her sick, or why being sick would be suspicious and would give her away? Which led to a lecture about promiscuity. The best part of it, she was studying to be, and now is employed as, a goddamn science teacher.